1. Gravius. The morning sun had just shed its red-gold hue, and now it shone white across the clear blue October sky. There was no wind, and the sun above warmed her face in the frozen mountain landscape. Akrysmir looked out over the world from the roof of the sky. Up here, nothing felt human. Only the gods could reach higher. With a blessed smile, she opened her arms to the world. No one needed to fear the dark anymore, for the fire goddess Sashshi would always call the sun forth. The light, the warmth, the joy. She felt it within, not only as warmth on her skin, but as a coursing glow inside her, charged with holy power, as after a prayer, with Sashshi's presence burning, without fading. It was there all the time, refreshing and life-giving. She turned and studied the gate behind her. The mighty entrance almost disappeared into the mountainside. It seemed carved from the world's own foundation. If you didn't know its secret, you might think it was only a wall with an elaborate relief, a picture of a road winding down a mountainside. The stone's face was smooth as glass, yet the sharp carvings could flay skin, and deep in the recesses clear, purple amethyst flashed in the sunlight. She raised her hand and let her fingertips brush the violet stone. It was cool against her skin, yet warmth spread within her, a deep, quiet safety. Deep in the heart from which she had come. With a tingling in her belly, Akrysmir drew a deep breath and gathered her will. She pressed her thoughts into a single point. The magic she had always carried was ready now. She recalled Gravius's words from the dreams and sang the chant she had written on a strip of cloth. The words came, light as light itself. They already seemed to know the way out. Gravius, Gravius in Samata's mountain, great rock gate open to Alamar's daughter, Sashshi's disciple. She paused briefly and crumbled herbs between her fingers with an elegant motion. Then she let the words flow again, an echo from the soul, softer than before, as if her inner voice bore them forward. Gravius was waiting, the one she had longed to meet for so long that at times she had doubted he truly existed. The amethyst in the gate began to glow. First a faint lilac sheen, then stronger, like a heart waking to life. The light swelled with every pulse, a force gathering itself. At last it was so blinding that everything turned white. Darkness took over, not like night, but like emptiness. She waited. It did not lift. It did not fade. Then she felt the words again. They already rested on her tongue. Something within her knew what had to be said. They flowed out. A song, not of voice, but of will. Elverlov. The words fell, and the darkness drew back. A white aura burst from her, bright and alive, large enough to light several meters around her. She turned once, searching, to see what the dark concealed. She stood on the other side of the gate, but disappointment was immediate. There was nothing. A place without life. A cold not like frost, but like absence. Something in her sank. This place had been in her dreams, filled with expectation and warmth. Now there were only shadows and boulders. Akrysmir stood quite alone in Samata's mountain. A plateau spread beneath her feet, dusty and even, a smooth floor shaped by someone. Farther ahead, there was a path. It led upward, away from everything that felt safe. She drew a deep breath and started toward it. The light was not something she carried, but it followed her. The path stretched like a narrow bridge hewn straight into the rock, with nothing to hold on to, no wider than 1.5 meters, and uneven. She stopped at the beginning, looked ahead. The path before her felt as slender as a thread. On both sides, chasms opened so deep and dark that the night sky felt closer than the bottom. She drew breath and took the step, though everything in her screamed that she should stay. A tingling rose from her belly. Fear of the drop pressed up through her body and lodged in her throat. She lifted her gaze, hopeful, hoping for something solid to keep her from sliding into the void. But there was nothing. Only a darkness as endless as the abyss beneath her. The path was all that existed, the only hold in a space without borders. Akrysmir's breathing quickened, and her hands trembled. A creeping dread tightened in her chest and threatened to dissolve her footing. One step, another. She had to hold on to something. Not the rock, but herself. She raised her head to the dark and whispered, "Sashshi, carry my fear. I am so small here. The depth beneath me, the dark around me, and what I cannot see. It frightens me. Take it from me and let me walk with your light. Your word is my path. Let it be my torch." The deep calls to me with silent voices, and the mouths of the chasms swallow my courage. The dark stares with blind eyes, and the cold steals my warm glow. Fear is about to drown me. Her voice shook, but she went on. "You give me love. Let it steady my heart's beat. You give me peace. Let it calm my mind. You give me strength. Let it be my armor. You give me the flame. Let it kindle my hope." She paused for a moment. "Your word is my light. Let my will and faith silence the voices of the dark." Then she resumed her walk and continued her prayer like a light on her way along the path of fear. The air had grown heavier. She could smell it, something old and shut in. A cry sounded far away. Bats, perhaps. The sound carried through the cave like a thin lament. Akrysmir shivered and quickened her pace. The rock path was wet and slick, but she had to go on. "I'm there soon, very soon," Akrysmir said to herself. She went faster. Each time her foot struck the rock, the echo sounded like something following her, not her own steps. The words of the prayer slowly slipped from her mind. A sensation seeped in where the words had gone, shadows of something she could not see. It crept up through her thoughts and pressed close. She began to walk fast, not to arrive, but to get away. She looked back. Nothing was there. Even so, something felt as if it were coming nearer. When she turned her head again to look, her foot caught. Her toe struck a ledge, and she stumbled. She skidded, lost her footing, and slid down the rock. With a scream, she caught a lip and hung there against the steep wall. She searched for purchase on the stone, her arms taut. Fear ran through her like fire. Tears fell into the depth and disappeared without a sound. It was not the strength of muscle, but the will that held her. A voice deep within. "You must not fail." She screamed, not from fear, but like a fire catching. She sought a foothold. The tips of her boots slid along the rock. She found an edge and pushed. Arms and legs worked in time. She crawled up, and at last lay on the narrow path. The rock was wet beneath her. Water seeped through the cloth, and the cold bit at her skin, a reminder that she was still alive. "Well, aren't you brave today?" she panted, more angry than relieved. She gathered her dark, purple-colored hair and braided it with calm motions. It was thick and slightly wavy. The cold bit through the wet clothes, and she pulled the wool cloak tighter around her. For a moment she stood still and let the anger go and the strength remain. Then she started walking again, firmer now, without hesitation. Fear had lost its grip. "It can't be far now," she whispered. She went on, and on. The path seemed never to end. as if it led her in circles inside a vast labyrinth hidden within the cave. She stopped. The blood drained from her face. Was she lost? The thought pressed in and she looked back. There had been no side paths, no forks. Or had there? For a moment she wavered, then forced herself onward, firmer steps, eyes forward. At last, she rounded a corner. A faint glow appeared farther ahead. Torches had been fixed to the rock's edge, right at the brink. The flames flickered in the cold air. Heavy and damp, the breath of the deep rose like a clammy hand. It slid up under her dress and farther out through her sleeves. The hairs on her arms stood up. From the stone floor, a wall rose, so high it devoured the light of the torches. When she reached it, the gate stood waiting, greater than the first, dark without end, and grown from the mountain's deepest core. Even the fire of the torches seemed to slide off the mirror, smooth surface of deep violet amethyst. She could almost see her shape within it, but the light warped the reflection. Something moved behind the stone. Deep in the crystal symbols lay, frozen signs in the dark, visible only because the amethyst was so clear. The door remained silent. To the right of the gate stood a pillar, low and faceted, and on it rested a stone figure, a gargoyle. Its wings were folded tight to the body, and its mouth was open in an eternal, soundless roar. The maw was filled with needle-sharp teeth. It had been carved in obsidian, black as night and gleaming in the torchlight. Small fracture lines ran across the surface like hair-fine fissures, yet it was still whole. Even so, the surface was smooth as polished crystal, shaped like something living made of stone. Akrysmir stepped closer and let her gaze slide over it. Every claw, every tooth had been chiseled with frightening precision. Even the staring, empty eyes looked as if they were watching the gate. She looked around. Only one pillar, no counterpart, no symmetry. It felt out of place. Not part of the gate's architecture, but something left behind. She turned her gaze to the stone gate. The cloth with Gravius's chant lay in her hand. She read the words aloud, clearly, and in the same tone as before. Nothing happened. Not so much as a whisper in the stone. It had to mean something. A gate like this was not carved in the mountain's heart, without a reason. There was a key, a secret. It had to be hidden nearby. Akrysmir moved away from the figure and over to the wall. With both hands, she let her fingers slide across the amethyst stone's surface, searching for marks, symbols, and hidden signs in the stone. A faint tink, like glass cracking under pressure, broke the silence. Then the scream came. Not human. It pierced the silence like a fissure in reality, not through the ear, but straight into the mind. Shrill and unbearable, as if torn from death itself. Akrysmir turned with a gasp, but had no time to react. Something large, something heavy ripped the air. A claw, sharp as split flint, tore through her cloak and seized her. She was hauled backward, lost her balance, and slid under her own weight. Her hands struck the stone floor as she tried to break the fall, but she could not stop it. She landed on her back, frozen with terror, and then its eyes opened, not empty, alive. A glowing gaze met hers, and everything around her vanished. There was no stone, no pain, no darkness, only eyes, its and her own, a burning bond between two wills, two depths, mirroring each other in silence. Time stopped. In that gaze, in that glow, she saw herself, seen by something other than eyes, two beings shaped of stone and kindled by fire, and the depth within her, not heard but felt, spoke a single word. child of fate. Sashshi's voice burned into her heart. She belonged to this world, but it did not come from here. Akrysmir drew in a breath, the first since their eyes had met. Then it shook its head, slowly, like someone waking from a dream and no longer understanding it. The glow in its eyes flickered, and when it looked at her again, there was only stone and fire left. Slim fissures veined the body, and magma burned in the cracks. With each breath, a splintering undertone rang through the stone, a warning about to break. It breathed. Steam burst from its nostrils, heavy and hot, and struck her face with the stench of burnt sulfur. It was as if the land of the fire mists itself breathed out through the cracks. She tried to scream, but her throat was closed. Only her body trembled, not from cold, but from the unspeakable realization. This creature had awakened for her. A gargoyle, not a gargoyle. Akrysmir whispered words. They moved soundlessly across her vocal cords, and an instinctive gesture traced a rune in the air. Not all the words made it out, but the will forced the power through. From within, a force exploded around her, not visible like fire, but felt like a shock, a jolt that shoved the gargoyle away like a beast struck by an unseen wall. It was as if Sashshi herself had put her hand between them and pulled the monster back. She gasped and dragged in a breath, as though she'd nearly drowned. A weakness seeped into her limbs. Her body had forgotten how to rise. The body wanted up. Her hands searched for purchase on the rock, but the surface was slick, greasy with moisture and bacterial film. She slid. A screaming roar followed her. Claws slashed the air but did not reach skin, only the sphere of will that still burned around her. Flames surged up around them, exploding each time the gargoyle struck the shield. A wall of fire, consuming and furious. But the creature did not stop. It rammed, bit, raked, and tore at the barrier with brutal resolve. In the middle of the flames, nothing seemed able to touch it. Nothing ordinary. Its hide threw sparks in the heat, but it did not move back. Akrysmir lay on her back, pinned. Fear sat in her chest like a stone, heavy and cold. She didn't dare blink. She didn't dare move. Every fiber in her held to a single thing, the shield. She held it by will alone. A will that quivered in her body and threatened to shatter. Each second burned a layer off her mind. Her arms trembled. The sounds grew overwhelming. Even the crackle of the flames cut into her. Her senses began to come apart. The shield spat sparks and sent the flames in shockwaves, but the gargoyle only answered with terror. Power rose in her like a tide, pressing, voiceless, patient, and merciless. The belt at her hip was intact. The components were there. If only the monster would give her distance. Unexpectedly, the creature abandoned its close attack and lifted in rage, as if she had commanded it. Wings stretched, claws lifted from the rock, and it rose, not away, but around, searching. Then it flew off a short way. A rush went through Akrysmir. Now she could run. She pushed off, half toward the path, half for flight, but stopped short. She saw it happen almost before it did. The creature behind her, faster than wind, shoving her over the edge. A single strike, and she would be nothing. She turned back. She saw it in her mind. It would not give up. Its will was bound to destruction. This was not a being that could be soothed, not a creature with a choice. It was hate and fire and instinct. She had to fight, not from anger, not for honor, but because this being did not belong here. It was not made for this world, but for the land of the fire mists. She was not to save it. She was to send it home. Her gaze swept quickly around. Where was it? She saw nothing, only darkness and the afterglow of the flames. She held her breath. The silence tightened like a cocoon, a pulse, a tension. Then, a glint at the edge of her sight. She gasped. There was no time for thought, only reflex and will. The words came, drawn up from something deep within, not learned, not remembered, but given. Lua emi sarmek. Lulurim teshimo. Emi viomat. Emi tilo asak. The rhythm of the spell was not only words, it was her will, pressed into the world. Every syllable carried her decision. To stand, to bring the light forward, whatever the cost. Her hands glowed because she willed it. A spark shot forth, weak at first, then blinding, as if the sun itself had been called to arms. The blast was not random. It was her force, her anger, her limit. Flames swallowed the gargoyle, and the heat slammed back like a wall. She reeled. Her legs threatened to give, but she did not step away. She held, even as her body began to fight her will. Hair whipped, skin dried, sweat flashed to steam, and still she stood. Her breath came hard, as after a fall, yet she did not bend. She had called the fire. It obeyed her, but a dull pain hammered in her temples, as if blood beat where her eyes could no longer keep the light out. A rushing rose, and her sight flickered. She understood it. Her body was failing. Every cell seemed to draw away. Her hands shook, and she sank to her knees, bracing on the rock. The gargoyle lay still, but the price had been paid. The magic had drained her, not only as exhaustion, but as if something in her had been scorched along with it. She dragged in a breath, hollow and ragged, as if even breathing had frayed in the crossing between will and body. Her heart still hammered in her temples. It was no longer enough to know the words. She had read, studied, memorized spells and rules, but this was real. Body and will were one. Next time she would stand stronger. A crack. The gargoyle moved. Slowly it rose. Its motions were heavy, wavering, but it found its balance quickly. The eyes glowed as before, wild, ravening, and its roar sent echoes through the mountain like a death warning. She went pale. How could it still move? Her whole body shook. She stared at the creature's body, steaming in the remnants of flame. She had felt the force, felt how everything in her had been pulled out and hurled against that being, and still, it had withstood it. As if the fire did not touch it. Pressure gathered behind her eyes, a stab spread behind her brow, pressure ready to crack. A cold shiver spread. She remembered the gaze. It did not belong here. It did not come from this world. Shaped of stone and fire, which her magic could not move. It would have to be Sashshi's flame. The beast sniffed the air. It caught her scent and roared. Will surged and she clenched her hands. She would not let it happen again. The monster would be forced from this place. The spell pressed forward, not as thought, but as instinct. She searched for Sashshi's words. She fumbled at her belt. In her haste, she tore a few pouches. Tense, she tried to breathe slowly to give the words to her magic. She found the rare ingredients and crushed them in her fist, cleared her throat with a cough or two, and a little blood ran from the corner of her mouth. She waited. Her body twitched in small, involuntary jolts, and her lips trembled. A shivering cold crept up her spine, not from the air, but from within, where the power had left an emptiness spreading like an inner chill. Holy words lay ready in her mind. Power from her, with the goddess's will, would drive Sashshi's divine burning hand into the ground and erase the beast. A destructive spell she had never yet shaped with her lips. The gargoyle rushed closer. When it came within reach, she screamed the words and let her will reach for the goddess's river of divine power. Sparks leapt from the rock beneath her and grew into a high wall of holy fire within seconds. The gargoyle's death scream ran cold down her back, even though she had expected it. Her chest tightened at the sound, and a jolt went through her, as if her body refused to believe it could finally be over. When the wall of fire vanished, only a black stone pillar remained. It crumbled to dust while sparks drifted up into the darkness before the gate. Akrysmir let herself sink to the floor in relief. She was exhausted, completely and utterly. Her whole body trembled. Her arms gave under her weight, and she lay there, breathless and heavy. Her hands went numb, and behind her eyelids dark specks flickered like stars in a black room. She spat out the blood and stared blankly into the air. Everything that had been her felt burned away, left in the echo of the flames. A faint wind swept the dust aside. She barely registered it, as if her senses were no longer hers, but belonged to someone she had once been. Is this how it ends? She thought somewhere behind her thoughts, not with victory, not with honor, but with silence and emptiness. She had nothing left to give. And yet she was still here, somewhere deep in the dark, like a distant trickle behind a wall of rock. Something else sounded. A feeling, a whisper, not a voice. And yet, she did not feel it as strength, but as a will not her own. A power that bore her, called her, lifted her. As if Sashshi herself whispered in the depths within her. Rise. She wanted it. Not with the body. The body was broken. Not with the will was broken. But something in her answered anyway. Not by her own strength, but because the goddess carried her where she could not go. She tried to rise. It was her, Sashshi, whose flame not only consumed, but lifted. A presence that did not only demand, but called. A deep rumble began to vibrate through the rock, not like an explosion, but like something ancient waking. It sounded like stone parting, as if the mountain itself breathed. Then it grew still. The silence was so heavy it felt sacred. Akrysmir was about to give in, but then the voice sounded, deep, fierce, not shouting, but resounding through her like something that had always waited. Come in, my long-awaited guest. She opened her eyes. She lay on the cold stone, right before the gate. Carefully, she turned her head and looked into the dark. But the dark was no longer dark. A golden glow poured out like a sun from the cave's depths, and she lay still a moment, spellbound. Then she rose. Not quickly. Each movement dragged pain behind it. But she staggered up and found her balance. She gazed into the cave and stood as if something holy were holding her. Not as a power, but as a presence. Gentle, patient, eternal. Great heaps of silver and gold lay in mounds. A mountain's secret laid open. Slowly, she moved forward, stepped into what felt like a temple built of riches. Gemstones in every color formed a path beneath her feet, winding like a trickling stream between hills of precious metal. She gazed into the cave and stood as if something holy were holding her. Not as a power, but as a presence. Gentle, patient, eternal. Great heaps of silver and gold lay in mounds, a mountain's secret laid open. Slowly, she moved forward, stepped into what felt like a temple built of riches. Gemstones in every color formed a path beneath her feet, winding like a trickling stream between hills of precious metal. Heavy corundum and zircon lay together with blue-green beryl and pink tourmaline prisms. Veins of serpentine wound between them, as if the earth's own spirit had woven the hoard in secret. Faceted spheres of golden grossular and deep red almandine lay side by side with sharp crystals of olivine and spinel, all scattered across the rock like broken rainbows beneath constellations drawn in diamond. Everything glittered, dense, precise, untouchable. Her steps sent a muted sound through the cavern, a blend of clink and crunch, like walking over frozen droplets. It was like a dream, a vision from another realm. Yet her body was still tired. Each step felt borrowed. The will was there, but the body lagged behind it, as if a remnant of the fight still sat in her muscles, and every nerve remembered what she had burned away. She looked up when two crystal golems stopped her. They were made of thousands of small, multicolored gemstones, their forms gleaming like living mosaics in the cave's light. She stood at the foot of an enormous hill of platinum coins and shining gemstones the size of apples. The horde winked toward the ceiling and cast a floating pattern of light over her. Akrysmir thought of what she had read in Soulsbound by Magic. Golems were made by magical power, souls sentenced to eternal punishment, captured and bound into unnatural bodies, shaped of solid matter, metal, stone, clay, and bound to a spellcaster's will, or they would destroy everything in their path. She understood the sentence, but she could not imagine a deed so cruel that eternal captivity was the only measured punishment that was just. She pushed the thoughts aside and sank to her knees before Gravius. Carefully, she lifted her gaze. The great celestial dragon lay lazily upon his treasure, his plumage, feathers from crown to tail tip, shining like sunlight. Above him, in the hollow ceiling, a gate stood open, not to this world, but to the celestial realm. Through it streamed the light of a distant sun, so vast it could bear his body if he were to step through. It shone down over him and painted his shape in white, gold, and mother of pearl. Not scales, but feathers, sleek and many-layered, covered him from muzzle to tail tip. A blessed stillness spread, as if for a moment the mind were cleared of everything else. There was only light, peace, and something that could be faith. Not as a call, but as a presence. He lifted his long neck, his shrunken feathered wings beat briefly, a distant memory answering a call. Once, many centuries ago, he had flown over seas, forests, and plains, but now age was a tether that never let go. Those wings could never bear his titanic body again. And yet, Akrysmir sensed it. He would not fade like others. His name was already written in Alinaris's books of the stars. "It is an honor to see you alive, Akrysmir." His voice was deep and compelling, and the smile he sent her stirred something in her she could not name. The trial demanded much. "I summoned the force you stood against. That creature was not your enemy, but your awakening. Now it is my duty to grant you rest. Follow my golems and return when you have rested. There is also a reward for your struggle." Akrysmir bowed low and followed Gravius's servants, while her eyes searched for one last glimpse of the dragon. Something in her chest changed. Not awe, not relief, but a quiet, unspoken recognition.